about the gaps or the fissures in our worldview, in our categories, and it's all about confusing us. And if you think you understand the paranormal, you clearly don't, because it's about us abandoning our understanding or our categories.
See, I don't think it's a mistake that in the title of the book that the supernatural is not all one word with a small
Right.
n. It's two separate words for a reason.
Right. That's the key. That's the key point of the whole book. And of course, when you just say the title, people lose that. They think it's one word, supernatural, but it's actually two words. Yeah, I mean, the main argument of the book is that what people think of the paranormal or the strange or the supernatural is actually natural. It's part of our world. These things happen all the time. We do not have a scientific explanation for them. That does not mean they're not real. It simply means we're not there. And that we live in a world in which these things are perfectly natural. So we're trying to make that argument in the book, essentially.
I mean, it makes sense because there's a lot of things in the natural world that we don't fully understand as it is. I mean, we're finding, especially getting into microbiology and microphysics, we're finding more and more things that are new information that we never would have thought of 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago. And even just discovering new species on the planet from time to time as well. Like, we haven't mastered everything in what we think is the known universe, so why can we say that this is something that's supposed to be the unknown? Assassin Matt Costa and science advisor Matt Moniz. We also have a special guest in the studio who we'll introduce in a few moments. But we are here to talk about the paranormal as we are each and every Saturday night. We are broadcasting live on WBSM as well as on the WBSM app and on Spooky TV at SpookySouthCoast.com. It's always good when the Red Sox end early because then we can hit you on all the different avenues that we can to make it easy for you to consume the show however possible for you. And then we're going to be talking tonight in a little while with Ken DaCosta from Rise Up Paranormal. We'll find out about the Ocean State Paracon that's coming up next month. We'll find out about not only who you can go out and see at the Ocean State Paracon, but also we'll find out a little bit more about who they are raising money for this year, because that convention every year is completely for charity, minus just the cost of putting on the event itself. All the rest of the proceeds go to a different charity each year. So Ken will fill us in on the charity that will be raising money for this year. And also a little bit later on, we will have The Week in Weird for you as well. But as I mentioned, we do have a guest in the studio that will probably dedicate much of the rest of the show after that to discussing with Moniz. Why don't you introduce our guest and your friend that you brought along?
All right, Dave McClellan from the Bfro and Squatchachusetts. I've been working with Dave and the guys from Bfro and Squatchachusetts now for past 2.5 years locally. When we get local reports that come into the Bfro down in the South Coast area, usually Dave gives me a call and the other guys that are involved in Squatchachusetts, and I go and talk to whoever calls in, and I share stuff I get with them. It's kind of reciprocal, and we've gone out on a number of different little expeditions, and we've got an actual Bfro expedition being done in the Bridgewater Triangle coming up next weekend, and I'll let Dave talk about that.
Yes, that's next weekend, Thursday to Sunday. It's out of Middleborough, KOA, Cape Cod, Boston Camp. And we've had some interesting things happen last year, and this year's looking to be, we're hoping, good for the, we have some new attendees, and really looking forward to it.
Excellent. Well, we'll talk some more about that coming up a little bit later on. Moniz, you weren't here last week because you actually were doing something with the Bfro guys, right?
Yeah.
And what happened there? Anything?
Oh, we got to check out a lot of historical sites and things like that. Went around to a number of locations that we're going to be going to this coming.
Oh, sorry about that.
This coming weekend. Got eaten alive by mosquitoes, but yeah.
So you were just kind of like pre-planning for the event coming up. Well, so you missed last week's episode where we talked about some of these stories, but I'd like to get your take on them. Some of these stories that have been coming out in the press about UFOs. We had Navy pilots talking about their experiences. We had, and we'll talk about Bigfoot in the government too a little bit later on too, because that came up this week. Matt shared that story out on the Spooky South Coast social media. But there seems to be a lot of UFO stories that have been coming out lately. And I was talking last week about, that's how disclosure will happen, not being, a UFO landing on the White House lawn. It'll be things that are kind of pieced out so that people will build up a tolerance for it and build up an understanding for it.
It's called titrated. Yes, it's been going on for the past decade and a half.
So
actually longer, but
so these stories coming out this week. I mean, these past few weeks, do they surprise you at all? Has there been anything that's come out that you said, "Wow, I can't believe that they revealed that"? Or
no, this is nothing new to me. Our people in the UFO community, we know that these things have been going on for decades, and that the government, no, they did not stop, paying attention to them in 1969 with the end of Blue Book. No, people that have common sense know that the government is going to keep following the information. They're just not going to release what they know.
Well, it wouldn't make sense anyway, because you can't guarantee that the reports that you investigated, from the late 40s to the late 60s are the same reports that you're getting now.
Right.
Whatever you might have attributed it to in 1955 doesn't mean that that's the same rationale that you'll be giving it in 1985.
Right, especially with much better, radar technology, video technology, and other types of senses. Our technology has exploded, and we still have this mystery. So now we know better. We can track balloons a hell of a lot better. We can track other planes a hell of a lot better, or detect various weather anomalies better now. So, and these things are still happening. So,
but the other side of it too is that you also have people are more observant, I guess you could say, or people are more looking to the skies, expecting to see these things. And also, we have cell phones in our pockets and all this kind of stuff. So it does kind of increase the amount of stuff that they would have to look into if they were looking into this fully. So maybe they wanted to have that perception be the reality, that they weren't really investigating it just so that they don't get inundated with a bunch of low-level BS that's not worth their time, but instead they're getting stuff from the sources that they deem, reliable.
Well, the way somebody put it to me that was in the know back in the day, they said they basically wound up getting to the point where the investigation they were leaving up to the people. They were surreptitiously just grabbing the information that people were gathering,
right?
In a sense,
So I look at it like you probably have Peter Davenport run the UFO Reporting Center, have MUFON run their database, and then the government can go in and look through those files just like anybody else could.
Correct.
And then they can determine which ones they want to follow up on.
Correct.
And the other part of that too is, then the question comes up, has there been any kind of secretive funding for some of these organizations? They're like, MUFON will tell you, no, we're not on the government dime, but maybe they're getting something.
But some of their supporters are.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're getting donations from somebody and you don't know where that person's getting the money from to donate to you. Same thing with, I think, the National UFO Reporting Center. They also run on donations, I believe.
Oh, yeah.
So if you...
But a lot of that is, grassroots stuff, though. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, but it's not like the government's going to come in and give you a $5 million one-time donation. They're going to have 1 million people giving you $1 at a time.
Yeah.
So, well, maybe not that many. That'd still be suspicious if all of a sudden they got 1 million donations. But you know what I mean. It'll be something that will it will happen in little bits of pieces at a time. So what do you think will be the forward thinking now of these, having these releases, having these stories come out? What will be the next step? Will there be more of this kind of stuff coming out? Will there be will there be active investigations of what
will wind up happening is, I know of course everything these days is turned this way. It will be turned political. Because people is like, well, how much money did you guys spend doing this and not telling how, and one side will throw the other side under the bus and vice versa. And then you'll get distracted again.
I just wonder if we'll get to the point where the FBI shows up at a crash site, say, or a supposed landing site, or any of these things that you would get called out to in the past. Like, now are you going to have to deal with FBI agents showing up there, or somebody from the Department of Defense? Because
this is nothing new that isn't already happening.
Right, but it's happening a little bit more on a clandestine level. They're not outright telling you who they are.
In some cases, yeah. Well, depending upon where it is, you're on government land. Yeah, government does.
Well, if it's if it's a national security issue, then they're going to identify themselves. But in general, if this person has an extreme, sighting in their backyard,
right,
and they call you in to check it out, you're generally, who's going to show up there and who belongs and who doesn't.
Well, they've already infiltrated a lot of the investigative groups that are out there. It's not hard to do. They're open memberships, so I mean, you can insert anybody you want. But there's a chance that, this may become more public now. When things happen, you may get the government saying, okay, maybe we do want to talk to you. A reopening of a public Blue Book again, so to speak.
Well, I think, too, I don't think it's coincidental that the Blue Book series comes out on the History Channel right before this stuff actually starts to happen. It does seem like they're kind of almost gearing up for... And I think that would be something that, for the most part, if you put that out there, I think you could get some public support. I don't know about congressional support, but you could get some public support for having an arm of the military or an arm of the Justice Department investigating these things. I mean, I don't think it's a coincidence either that we have President Trump talking about a Space Force and people saying, well, yeah, it makes sense. We need to think of space as a battleground because, I honestly think that when the president's talking about a Space Force, he's not talking about aliens coming here and trying to invade us. We have to fight them. He's talking about that being a place where countries on Earth will go to wage war with each other. So I can kind of understand where he's coming from with that. It makes sense that as our technology advances, it would make more sense to fight it away from where there would be civilian casualties.
Well, it's not just that. You control the space around the planet. You control basically all of the satellites that are out there.
Right.
You're controlling communication. There are weather modification things that you can space-based that can cause.
I don't think that it's, to control it. I think it's to make sure that nobody is trying to control it. It's trying to make sure that it stays free up there.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But the other side of that too is maybe if you do have that Space Force, maybe that creates the investigative arm for people, because now it would almost be something that you could see being a fair discussion if you say something came and landed in my yard and I saw beings in the window and then it took off again. Well, you want to make sure that it's not Russia or China or some other country that has some sort of, space flight ship that's coming down from the skies. So it does open it up so that you can investigate those things under this moniker of the Space Force, under this branch of the Space Force. So
another big part of it is surveillance, space-based spy in the sky. Looking down and you get to see the whole planet. And it's not like you can hide per se.
But part of it too, like part of this is on us as regular everyday civilians, because there was a time when people could look to the sky and they knew what was there and what belonged and what didn't, and they knew what would be where. And we don't pay attention to it anymore because we don't need it for navigation. We don't need it for illumination. We don't need it to be anything more than just what it is. It's just some lights in the sky. So, I mean, nowadays, if I'm embarrassed to say, but I feel like I'm just like everybody else. If you're out there looking and you see something anomalous in the sky and you're not sure exactly what it is, I have to open up the sky map on my phone and point that up in the sky to try to figure out, oh, that's just Jupiter. As opposed to just being able to look at it like people probably could have 100 years ago and said, oh, there's Jupiter.
Oh, that's Telsat 5 or, whatever satellite is flying by. Because they have those apps too.
Right. The only thing that I can tell, like people are always like, well, I see this bright light. I don't know if it's the space station or not. Like I open up a space station app on my phone to see where it is, because I couldn't tell you what it looks like going by in the sky without that. And that's part of our own, I don't want to say ignorance, but it kind of is. Like it's something that we used to know that we don't know anymore. You guys spend a lot of time out in the woods. I'm sure that it's beneficial to you to know exactly what you're looking at in the sky to help you with a matter of direction.
Yeah.
But most people just don't bother anymore.
Yep.
Because they're going to have their phone with them and it's going to have a GPS in it. But what happens when you get to a place where that GPS no longer works? So
the North Star is still going to be there.
And we go to a lot of areas where even our radios last year, the radios kept bugging out and batteries.
That was when the first excursions into the Bridgewater Triangle, electronic things for them were going haywire. And I'm just laughing because welcome to my world.
Not Bigfoot related, but very, very voices being picked up on audio.
Yeah, we're getting EVPs.
That we didn't hear, but we played back later on. And there was Mike Z was asking questions.
Yeah.
And he got some replies, and they weren't nice.
Well, we hear things from people all the time, too. They're like, well, I don't worry about it because I have GPS on my phone, and even when I don't have signal, my GPS still works. Well, okay, but what happens when your battery dies? Like most people can't even work a compass.
Yeah.
Which is a shame.
And this was even after going back out to the parking lot, putting all new batteries in, going back in,
and still the same thing?
We weren't even far apart from each other. Couldn't pick up. No sound. Nothing. It's like they were dead.
It doesn't take much. I mean, especially when you're in the woods around here.
No, but these were in sight of each other.
Well.
Yeah.
But I've been in some buildings where I've had that same thing happen. Where all of a sudden the darkness just becomes so weird and like, you can't even communicate with each other, or they sound like they're far away. And it's a freaky thing when it happens. So we'll definitely get more into some of that a little bit later on. We'll also take people's calls throughout the course of the night, especially if you live local and you've had a Bigfoot experience that you want to report. This would be a great night to do it. We've had people that have called in the past and they say, oh, I think I saw something. And we have to say, well, wait till Moniz comes back so we can pass the report on to you guys. But tonight would be a great night. 508-996-0500. We'll take your calls a little bit later on, because we are going to talk with Ken DaCosta coming up in just a few moments. Again, if you've never been to the Ocean State Paracon, and we will talk about it in depth with Ken, but if you've never been to it, it's got to be the most laid back, picturesque location. It is, without a doubt, even when it rains, it's a weekend well spent outside, well spent outdoors, and it's what we want these conventions to be. It's everybody coming together for a good cause, for a good purpose, and just kind of hanging out and spending time with each other. Although it's structured, and it has its structure, it's not all about making sure that every single minute is planned out, or making sure that every single thing is, dictated to the T. It's just a relaxing weekend. And when you're spending a Saturday and Sunday in July at a paranormal convention, you want it to be like that. You want it to be something that is just a regular kind of summer activity. And so that's why this is one of my favorite events to do each year, because it always just feels like a bunch of friends getting together to hang out under some tents in the summertime. So we'll talk about that coming up with Ken. And if you've been before, you know that even though some of the same folks come back year after year after year because they want to take part in it, you know that they always bring something different to the table. And so I think I've got a good lecture for this year that I've come up with. It's going to be a brand new lecture that I'm debuting, but I think the title of it alone will get some people to show up. It's called, I have to tweak the exact wording of how I'm going to do it, but How to Become a Paranormal TV Investigator.
Oh.
Tell me that at a Paracon, half the audience won't be, half the people won't be just jumping in to sit in that and be like, oh, this is what I want. This is what I came here for. I want to learn how to be on TV. Now, it's little secret inside info. It's not exactly going to be a how-to. It's going to be kind of a history of paranormal media, like how these things came together and how the media started focusing on some of this stuff. And I had the opportunity to talk to somebody the other night on Midnight in the Desert who's running an organization where it's media people involved in researching anomalous phenomena. So it's people who are television news people, newspaper reporters, videographers, people who are working kind of in that world, who are also interested in looking into these things. And as I was talking to him, I said, I can't believe it's taken that long, because there's so many people that work in those fields that are involved in this, that I can't believe that it's taken this long for them to kind of come together and put all their eggs in one basket. Because how many times, Moniz, have we had somebody on the show where they're like, well, I'm a journalist by day, or and I always have to say, well, yeah, so am I, and it's like, and so is this guy, and so is that one, and so is this lady, and so is this person. There's enough of us out there that it only makes sense that we all kind of come together, because this is something that has been a huge shift in the way that it's been presented. I'm sure even you guys have seen this with some of the newspaper coverage and media coverage you've gotten. It goes from being this, check out these wacky guys and what they do, to now it's being taken more seriously.
It is. I think all of the realms are. I think all the UFOs, the Bigfoot, the ghosts. I think people are, and especially all the new stuff leaking out about, I think there's going to be a big disclosure too soon. They're gradually... all military people, government people, showing the fighter pilots chasing them, and
it's definitely a change. Just that little bit of change in the way that they present it changes the way that people consume it. So if the TV networks and the TV reporters and the newspapers are taking it seriously, then the people who are consuming that news will take it more seriously. I hate more than anything when I have to watch some of my friends who get the chance to go and be on media to present different things, and I feel bad for them when they go to this and it's like some morning show or something, some morning TV news show, and they're like, well, coming up, we've got somebody who does something really strange. You're not going to believe what he does, coming up in a few moments. And then they bring them on so you look for ghosts. Well, we all know ghosts aren't real. So what are you really looking for? Things like that. It's why are we still having those comments made? Mm-hmm. First of all, whoever your segment producer is lazy as hell, because they should have been able to give you a bunch of talking points that didn't involve making any stupid jokes. The stupid jokes are kind of always going to be there. But if that's not the core of the conversation, at least that's forgivable. But there's so many times that I watch these interviews and I'm like, but why don't you, if you have on the BFRO, why aren't you asking them about this investigation that they've posted about, or this investigation that they posted about? Instead, you're just going to ask them these generic questions about, so what do you think about them naming a monster truck Bigfoot? That's pretty weird, huh? Like, that's just what bothers me, is that we're talking about, disclosure happening in this slow level, but it's
still
doing
get laughed at.
Right. It's doing
still not the water cooler chat in the morning or.
But then I see, though, sometimes that it can be, if the right person is the person doing it. Like, I think people that have worked with me in places have probably thought that I'm crazy, and probably thought that I'm nuts about going out there and doing some of the stuff, or even talking about it here on the show. But for the most part, when they've had conversations with me, they've tried to at least find out why it is that I do it and why it is that I believe. I've been lucky enough not to encounter a lot of. There's been some people, especially when I was working as a cook and there were some customers. There's been some people that have said you're insane. You're or even people that have said you're just chasing after demons, right?
Oh yeah.
So we've gotten some of that blowback, but I think for the most part, people have been at least respectful of that, and I think by not coming off as crazy, that helps. But I know plenty of people who don't come off as crazy that are treated much, much harsher than that. But again, we're going on almost 20 years now of paranormal media being out there. You would think by now that it's become more accepting of some people.
It's good tabloid fodder. It's a good joke. Belittling, and you just got to let it roll off. But I noticed in the Bigfoot realm, since the TV show Finding Bigfoot just got finished up 9 or 10 years, and it really, people that I used to be around that would never talk about it, all of a sudden were asking me about it, like, hey, I watch that show, because their kids watch it. It's a kids-geared show. But you'd be surprised how many people were all of a sudden interested in it, because now they're seeing people come forward, and pretty credible people all over the country.
And I think that's what led to such a rise in people who are investigators of whatever kind, whether it's ghosts, Bigfoot, UFOs, whatever. The rise of it came because of television, and we get critical of that a lot. We say, well, they're just doing it because they saw other people doing it on TV. But at the same time, they're doing it because they saw people doing it on TV. Like, that made it okay for them to say, this is something that I think I can go out there and do.
Does it matter how you found it? It's the search that's what's important, right?
Right. And I've freely admitted that, Ghost Hunters coming on TV in 2004, I never would have thought to do this show if not for that. When I was growing up, there wasn't a lot of outlets to talk about this kind of stuff, and if it did, it didn't last. So, Art Bell was able to do it for a long time, and there's been other shows, like Sightings had a pretty good run, I think. The X-Files, even though it was fictional, that had a pretty good run, but there's been some tolerance for this stuff, Twilight Zone, but for the most part, you would see things kind of come and go. Fly-by-night, real quick, Saturday afternoon specials about stuff, more than you would see sustained interest in it. So it wasn't something that you wanted to get involved in if you wanted to have a long career.
Right, like Sightings. How long did that last? A season or two?
I think it had a couple of years, didn't it?
Yeah. Like 2 or 3.
Unsolved Mysteries.
Unsolved Mysteries had a pretty good run.
In Search of. That was probably my first show that got me hooked into all these.
And the fact that came back and stayed on the air, in reruns.
Yeah. I think they're doing it again, a third version of it.
Yeah, they just started it with Zachary Quinto.
Yeah.
And Jeff Belanger got to be on it.
Yeah.
And I remember him commenting, like, how cool is that like one of the shows that got me involved in this and interested in this stuff, I got to be on the newer version of it. But then, you also have, one of the things that I'm going to be talking about in my lecture is the show That's Incredible.
Yeah.
That was, when I was a kid, that show was like appointment viewing for my family. We watched it every week. And seeing some of these, just some of the weird stories that they would present, but then every once in a while they had a paranormal story in there. And
what about Ripley's Believe It or Not?
Right. Ripley's has come back again and again. There's actually a Ripley's version right now that's on again. And it just keeps coming back as a television show because people are forever submitting stories to it. And they have enough stories in their archives anyway.
And it just shows you, like, the longevity of how people like a good mystery. And the unexplained more than paranormal. It's just not explained. What's the other one? There was another one.
There's been dozens of them over the years. It's a topic that people are interested but don't want other people to know they're interested.
Right. Well, at least
in
they didn't. Now it's changed.
Now it's Mysteries of the Museum. They
have
a lot of the weird.
One of the ways that I was able to consume paranormal stories when I was a kid in a way where I could happen upon it and read it without raising too much attention to myself for doing it. I used to like to go into the library and hang out in the 100 section of the Dewey Decimal System, and I'd go down there and read some books around, but you wouldn't want like your classmates coming in and seeing you down there. But one of the ways that I used to consume paranormal themed stories was my grandmother every week bought the National Enquirer, Star Magazine, and maybe a couple other of those tabloids. And so I would find them kicking around her house, and I would always read them. And you would find a story about this person got visited by a spirit. This person got abducted by a UFO. And even at a young age, I knew that those newspapers were full of crap, but at least the stories were out there, and it kind of got me interested. And I would think to myself, as I got older, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, reading those stories, I would think to myself, even if they made this story up completely, there's got to be some basis of truth for it. There's got to be something that's happening to make it resonate with people. And then I realized how easy it is to just make up a story like that. And then I kind of wished I had gotten that job. Because imagine getting to be a journalist without having to actually do any journalism. That's the best. I think we have a call on the line here, so let's go to the phones. Good evening. You're on Spooky South Coast.
Ago, I get the app called Newsbreak. It's a red app with it looks like origami with a letter N, and it showed a picture, and the headline was "A Bigfoot, West Virginia," and it shows a shoreline like along a river going into some thickly settled woods, and about 6'4", but it was black hair instead of the traditional reddish orange. And it was out there for about a week on different angles. Had any of you seen that?
I have not.
No. No.
We were talking about the kid that was missing with the bear.
But
that was the latest.
That was North Carolina.
Yeah.
But this was definitely West Virginia. It was near a riverbank. There was some guys who were doing some a lumber company. There was a pack of them, and 3 or 4 of them had angles, but the closest guy to it, and it shows human-like, all black hair, kind of leaning over with the right hand on the rock, and then it kind of paused, didn't look back or anything, and then went right into the woods. But it showed 2 or 3 still pictures.
All right.
I'd like to see those, so I'm going to have to Google those.
You're saying about a week ago?
I looked at it a week ago, but it actually happened about 5 or 6 weeks ago.
Okay.
It was sent to me on Newsbreak. On the app, it's called Newsbreak.
And where did it take place again? West Virginia?
West Virginia, right near the Virginia border. So there was a river, I guess it straddles both. And there was some guys for a lumber company going up and doing some survey, and there was a group. So there was 2 or 3 pictures, but the one clearest was the guy that was closest. And it showed they estimated about 6'4", pretty built. And they heard a splash and looked and saw it heading away. And 3 of them got pictures.
Wow.
And it's leaning because there's some rocks. It's kind of an angle. And it went into the tree line. And they were like all flipping out.
Yeah,
and I really surprised
I'm going to look into that case.
Coverage. And when I got it, it was just that somebody else sent it to me.
I'm looking it up on Google News here to see if I see the story anywhere, and I don't see anything coming up.
Yeah, me neither.
Lots of reports.
I'll try to draw it back up, and I'll send it over to you, Tim.
I'd appreciate that.
Yeah.
Okay, my friend. Bye-bye.
All right, thanks. Have a great night. 508-996-0500 is the number if anybody wants to call in. Now, it's good that we're getting stories about Bigfoot in the news, though, that don't end up with, costumes in a freezer.
Yeah.
because that was still one of our most commented on episodes of all time. By the way, when
we were just talking about that at Matt's house.
Yeah, we actually had
Bigfoot.
We had Tom Biscardi on after that, trying to explain away his involvement in it, saying that he got duped.
Yeah.
And to this day, that was probably like 10 years ago, and to this day, it's still the one that gets us the most comments out of any of our episodes. Although sex scandals in the paranormal is starting to catch up, that one got a lot of. I think just people go on YouTube and search the word sex, and that comes up, and they're like, "Oh, well, now I'm going to comment on this."
I would think he would want to see it before I go out in front of all the cameras and put my name on this. If that's how it happened, I mean.
Right. I mean, and let's face it.
See it first.
He doesn't exactly have the most stellar reputation himself anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
So if you're coming into this with that kind of a reputation, then you're going to try to say that these guys duped you. Like, I'm not going to buy it, first of all. And second of all, like you're saying, do your due diligence, you know? Don't get involved. And I don't remember all the particulars of it.
Consider the source it came from, to look at it. And because I was telling Matt earlier, a funny story, when that broke, I got called up the place I worked. I worked in the warehouse, so I got called up to the office, and a few people are huddled around the computer. Hey, you got to see this. This just broke. You got to see this. It's on CNN. And I looked at it, and in about 5 seconds, I goes, "That's a costume," and walked away. "Where you going? This is all over the news." And I goes, "It's a costume he got from eBay."
Right. Yeah.
With some roadkill in it, you know.
And if I remember right. Again, all the details probably escape me a little bit, but if I remember right, at least one of the two guys that was involved outside of Biscardi, one of the guys was a police officer.
Yes. Lost his job, too, for it.
He did. But so if that's the case, maybe Biscardi is thinking, well, if I'm going to pull another hoax off, like, these are the guys to get involved with because they have credibility, so that will help me have credibility. And then, of course, they get found out because... First of all, how could they have not? Like, how do you go into that thinking you're going to get away with it?
Yeah. The quality of it, I could see if it was, like, we've seen some real good one
like the Minnesota Iceman. Although that supposedly was a real body, and then they switched it out. If you talk to Lauren Coleman, his stories about it. Yes.
There was a guy we just had, came from the Ohio Bigfoot Conference, and there was an artist that they were so lifelike. You literally could walk up to them, and they were rubber. Mm-hmm. But the wrinkles in the skin, the hair, the eyes, probably the best effects of a Sasquatch you could see. That I could see, and it got taken or duped. But this thing was folded up in a box, flat-faced. It was, people wanted to believe. I think a lot of people did, and they call him up. They know, they know you're into it.
But, that thing happens. And yeah, it's terrible, and it probably had some negative blowback for yourself and your organization and people that just go out there and do this, where people say, well, obviously if that's a hoax, they all must be hoaxes. Yeah. But then again, maybe if that didn't happen, maybe we don't see the rise of interest in Bigfoot that followed up, that we wouldn't have all these television shows and specials and all these things that have come out as a result of it. So although it might have been negative when it happened, I think that there was some good that came out of it. So I'm just taking a look to see if Ken's still around. He might be on an investigation or something tonight, so that could be holding him up. But why don't we take a break that we have to take, and when we come back on the other side, we will talk with Ken. He is on the phone right now, so we'll take a real quick break, and then we'll come back with more Spooky South Coast coming up in just a moment. Just let me.
Dustin Parry. Andrea Perrin will be making her triumphant return to home again this year to Rhode Island, and of course Joe Chin and the amazing Tim Weisberg, who always comes up with something a little bit different every year, and I'm looking forward to your presentation this year. I do a lot of running around over the course of the day, but I always make it a point to at least stop in there and see what you've got cooking up. So we're looking forward to that again this year.
Well, what I love is that, every year I try to come up with something new to add to my lecture arsenal. And I love Ocean State because it's the greatest place to try and debut something, because you've got a great audience that's willing to not only listen to some of these different ideas, but give you great feedback so that you can take whatever it is that they say and only help to make the presentation better based on their information.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing, because in this particular venue, I think the presentations to me are still important. You know, I know a lot of these things, people give a talk and everything like that. But with everything that's going on in terms of different vendors and craftsmen and authors and artists, and a really, really well-rounded group of vendors that we have there, I always try to emphasize the talks as well, because at the end of the day, I think it's important to give people a forum to share a message and hopefully do something a little bit different. In that vein, we're going to do a couple of panels this year. One is going to be on demonology, and another on psychic mediums. So we'll be taking some questions, or soliciting some, from our attendees, trying to pick the most provocative or interesting questions and hit our panel with those. So They're going to have to think on their feet, and I think that'll be really interesting.
For sure. We only have about 2 minutes left, so let's make sure we get the key information out about Friends Way. What is Friends Way, and what are they all about?
Well, Friends Way is an advocacy group here in Rhode Island that offers free grief counseling to children and their families who have suffered a traumatic loss in their lives. They do this free of charge, and they go beyond counseling. They do things like outings and peer groups where kids and their families find out that they're not alone and have something that they can talk about, and it's very cathartic, and it helps them bring some closure to it. So they do some amazing work there.
And so let's let everybody know how they can get tickets if they want to get involved. Again, it's July 13th and 14th, 11 a.m. to 6 p.m. at the Assembly Theater in Harrisville, Rhode Island. How can they get tickets if they want to get them ahead of time?
Well, if you want to get advance tickets, you can visit our website. That's riseupparanormal.com. Click on Paracon on the menu, and it'll take you to a page where you can get advance tickets to the event. But it's important to note, because I'm asked this, that yes, there are tickets at the gate, but if you want to beat the lines, this is a great way to do it. Tickets are $12 a day for adult, a $20 weekend pass, and children under 12 $5.
You can't go wrong. It's a very low price to spend a day with some great people, some great friends. You'll learn a lot. You'll be able to pick up some all different kinds of stuff from the different vendors that are there. Everything from paranormal equipment to handmade trinkets and books and all kinds of things. And of course, the big draw every year is always Andrea Perrin. She'll be there again as well, right?
Absolutely. Andrea puts this aside every year. She loves coming back home and paying a visit and meeting some of her old school chums and neighbors. And we're very, very happy that she's able to join us each and every year.
All right. So July 13th and 14th, the Assembly Theater in Harrisville, Rhode Island, the 2019 Ocean State Paracon, presented by Rise Up Paranormal and benefiting Friends Way. Ken, looking forward to seeing you then, if not before.
I hope before, but in any event, it's coming up soon. Thanks for the opportunity to come on, talk a little bit about it, and looking forward to it. So you guys have a great night.
You too. Take care.
Okay, you bet.
That is Ken DaCosta, and again, we'll be hanging out at the Ocean State Paracon July 13th and 14th. More details as the weeks go on as well. We're going to take a break. We'll be back with more Spooky South Coast in just a moment. Welcome back. Hour number 2 of Spooky South Coast. Tim Weisberg here, along with the silent assassin Matt Costa, science advisor Matt Moniz, and our guest in studio this week from the BFRO, Dave McCullough. And you've probably seen some of their awesome Squatchachusetts stickers around. Moniz has one on his laptop, and so we'll talk more about that coming up in just a little bit. We'll also take your calls at 508-996-0500, and we will... You know, people missed the Week in Weird last week. Matt Bleistein took the week off. He was on vacation. So he has returned with the Week in Weird this week. And I know people were upset that we missed it last week. But hey, guys on vacation, But it's good that people are enjoying the Week in Weird and that they like the new format. Don't forget that if you do enjoy it, Matt Costa always puts it up as a separate video on our YouTube channel, so you can just share that out with people, even if you have friends that you don't think would want to listen to the entire episode of Spooky South Coast, but they would just like to see the Week in Weird. You can share that video out on your own social media, share that video directly on their pages, or send it to them via email, however you want to share your YouTube videos around, and then you can spread the word of the Week in Weird. So let's get into that right now with Matt Bleistein and the Week in Weird.
In a world where the paranormal is just a breath away, we're spanning the globe to bring you the best in paranormal news. This is the Week in Weird.
Hello, and welcome back to the Week in Weird. I have poison ivy all over my body, including my face, so we're going to make this fairly quick. Our first story takes us to Thailand, where one man is making nightmares that you can eat. Artist Kitiwat Uniram has been making unsettling, realistic, and gory body parts out of bread in his family's bakery for over a decade. The son of a baker, he learned to bake at the age of 10, but after studying fine arts at university, he decided to use dough as his medium to create art in his own unique style. What appear to be severed human body parts covered in blood are actually hand-painted, entirely edible loaves of bread using cashews and raisins to create eyes, lips, and other details. Kitiwat doesn't make his baked art with the intent to scare. Instead, he seeks to use his bread to share a deeper, more profound lesson. He says, baking human body parts can show the audience just how transient bread and life really are. Truly, food for thought. Our next story is an update to a segment we brought you a few weeks ago. Back in May, Ghost Adventure star Zach Bagans bought a supposedly cursed chair known as the Devil's Rocking Chair, which was closely connected to an exorcism case that Ed and Lorraine Warren were involved with in the 80s. Zach planned on displaying the chair in his haunted museum in Las Vegas, but on the exhibit's opening night there was so much paranormal activity surrounding it that his plans changed dramatically. In this video footage, taken from inside the museum, we can see Zach and a friend near the chair's exhibit when a door to the chair's room opens on its own. Zach then appears to take a few selfies before running to the aid of a woman who fell unconscious on the stairs directly above the exhibit after a fit of crying, while asking, "Why is this happening to me?" After being open for only a few hours, the activity surrounding the chair was so pronounced that it forced Zach to close an exhibit for the first time since the museum opened, and it will stay closed until further notice. At the risk of sounding like a broken record, our last story is about a recent spate of attempts to break some fairly obscure Guinness World Records. In the Netherlands, 850 vertically gifted people gathered to break the record for the largest gathering of tall people. Women had to be 5'9" and men 6'2". The previous record was set in Australia with 139 people in 2009. In Tennessee, David Rush popped 200 balloons in 14.77 seconds to beat the previous record of 33.74 seconds set in New York by Ashrita Furman in 2014. Montreal yoga instructor Dana Glowacka held a plank for 4 hours and 20 minutes, breaking the previous record of 3 hours and 30 minutes set by Maria Calamera in 2015. In Egypt, the record for the longest iftar banquet table was broken, with a table measuring 10,465 feet, with enough space for serving nearly 7,000 people. Iftar is the traditional Muslim meal to break the Ramadan fast. The previous record was set in the United Emirates with a 9,789-foot table in 2018. In Ireland, 824 students broke the record for the most people in one place patting each other on the back. The previous record of 329 people was set by Leicester Grammar School in England in in 2018. The record for patting yourself on the back is currently held by everyone's favorite president, Donald J. Trump. It doesn't look likely to be broken anytime soon. And that's it for this week's installment of The Week in Weird. I'm your host, Matt Bleistein, and I'll see you next week.
Members, guides that'll take you out if you've local and looking for something to do next week and you've always had an interest in it. This is a good way to get your feet wet and get involved in the subject. That's how I got involved with it in 2005. I attended the Whitehall, New York expedition, and I've been going since. And it's just, once you do go, you can go anywhere in the country or Canada once you've attended one. And they usually are sites where there's been sighting reports. We were out actually today checking a couple areas where there's been sightings. We had 4 new attendees. We have some returning people. Each expedition will have people that have been on other ones. So it's a good group of people, good group of friends. You educate you about the subject.
Mm-hmm.
We have a couple brothers that are Squatchachusetts members, Tim and Eric Vogel. They'll be doing outdoor demonstrations, cast-making demonstrations, evidence collecting. So a couple of people that were new today actually learned a lot just from coming out and asking questions, and they were thrilled at the end of the day. So it's a good way to get involved in it.
Yeah, because I think a lot of people are interested in the topic, but they don't know how to go out and do it. And it's definitely one of those things where you don't want to just take what you've seen on television and go out and do it on your own because, I mean, first of all, you could contaminate any evidence that you do find. You might not know what even to look for when you get out there. And the worst case scenario, you get lost. So
exactly. Yeah.
it's worth going out with people that know.
Lost, especially now everything's green, and if it's not well marked, you can get turned around and just by poking around. And so yeah, you got to be. And like you said earlier, sometimes the electronics don't even work, and you could have the top of the line GPS, and it's just out of range and useless.
But when you get into an area like the Bridgewater Triangle where things just go haywire naturally.
Yep.
We encounter it all the time.
So you said that you got involved with this in 2005?
Yep.
So was the Squatchachusetts organization already existing, or did you begin it after that?
7 years now.
Okay.
Squatchachusetts has been, but the Bfro started in 1995, and it's been going since.
And so in all that time since you got involved with this here locally, how many, if you could guess, how many different expeditions have you done in New England?
New England, I've done probably a dozen over the years with a couple different organizations.
So there's a lot of sightings that are reported. There's a lot of activity going around in this area to make it worth people's time that want to look into Bigfoot here in New England.
Yeah, those would be like organized expeditions.
Mm-hmm.
I was talking to 12, but I've been out a lot more than that, just on my own or with a few people. But yeah, it's just once you start doing it, if you always had the interest in it, you'll, like a lot of times the joke is a bad day at golf is better than a good day. This is most times nothing happens, but it's that one or two odd times that something really happens and you just know your adrenaline's, this is what you came for. This is worth all the...
Because that's a question that I get from people all the time is like, well, do you have Bigfoot in your area? Because they know about the Pacific Northwest. They know about some of these other areas where they have different type of, creatures that are spotted, skunk man sightings, or all these different possible Sasquatch creatures that are just differentiated in appearance a little bit. But people are always like, so you actually have them in New England? And I think that they go back to the Native Americans in this area with reports of them.
Actually, all around the country, all the tribes.
Yeah, some of the first reports of wild men come from when the Pilgrims were landed here. And, the native Wampanoags have had history with these encounters going back thousands of years.
So you got to be careful now when you talk about the Wampanoags on the show.
Okay.
I found out that I got yelled at one of my lectures. We're not supposed to talk about it. I got shooed out. And I said, well, then come on and talk about it. You're saying, no, we don't talk about it. I'm being slightly facetious, but yeah, no, I got warned about sharing Wampanoag beliefs. I mean, somebody has to, because we have to talk about it.
Well, then they really shouldn't be talking about it in public then.
We can't leave it at
people to talk about it.
Well, no, that was the thing. She pulled me aside because I was talking about it in public. So, but I was like, well, then you need to come on and tell the stories. But anyway.
We're not telling the stories. We're just saying that they do happen.
Right. We're not trying to misrepresent their culture in any way. But they do go back that far. I mean, these reports are not, it's not just because people are finally going out and looking for Bigfoot in New England that people are seeing it. It's been something that's been happening forever. And having somebody that can go out and look for it and being able to train people to know what to look for, first of all, can get rid of a lot of misidentification. I'm sure there are a lot of things in this area that people could see in the woods that they could easily mistake for being a Sasquatch creature that are easily explainable.
Exactly. And a lot of people are already thinking about it and want to see a black blob run across and, hairy and dark. And that was a Bigfoot. Well, when it's dark at night, every branch that breaks or a twig, and it's just, naturally falling off the tree, nothing, or an owl, and it could be anything. But I think people want stuff to happen now. Just, it's that close. They know it's that close. And, people that are into it, a lot of people are just want to be skeptical. They need one on the table. They need, show me something, which is understandable.
I mean, I think I'd rather run into a Bigfoot in the woods than a black bear.
Yeah.
At least Bigfoot's been smart enough to avoid people for all these years. The bear is just going to come right at you. So.
But getting back to your Native American thing, that goes back to the earliest explorers, the earliest natives here. They've cave drawings. Mm-hmm. California has a lot of rock paintings. They've always honored them in their baskets, their totem poles.
Things that all reference this type of creature.
Yeah, hundreds of years.
So there's definitely something to it. We have a phone call on the line, so let's go to that. And if you want to call in, 508-996-0500 is the number. We're going to try and keep it on topic. Good evening. You're on Spooky South Coast.
Good evening, Tim.
Hello, how are you?
I just wanted to check in. First of all, if I could, I didn't catch the website for that Ocean State Paranormal. I'd like to get that first. If I could, I got a pen and paper so I can write it down.
Sure, it's riseupparanormal.com.
Rise.
All one word. RISEUP.
Yeah.
Paranormal.com.
Paranormal.com.
And then when you click right on the link there for the Paracon, that will have your option to buy tickets.
Great, because that sounds very interesting to go to.
Oh yeah, it's always a great time, and bring some cash because the food trucks that they have come in are amazing.
Well, I don't want to hijack your show, but I figured I'd give you an update.
Sure.
As far as 99% sure, Monday is going to be my day.
Okay.
To get everything, and I was told. First of all, I was sent some money through the mail from the Justice Department, because the guy there had put me in a special sweepstakes that me and two others that were getting ripped off.
Mm-hmm.
And so first prize is $500 million in a car. Second prize is $220 million in a car. Third prize is $105 million. And he told me I was guaranteed for one of those three, because there's three of us that were put in for it.
I just can't believe they can't just throw in a car with the third prize too.
I don't know what I think that's the way.
I mean, I guess if you're getting $100 million, you can get your own car.
Yeah,
but still,
or truck.
Oh yeah. So I just figured I'd keep you up to date, and I hopefully Monday or Tuesday I'll if Barry doesn't mind me crashing his show, I'll have a celebration down the station.
All right. Well, hey, we could use it. We would appreciate it.
Oh well, the majority of you guys have been super with me, so I enjoy it.
Well,
so
I hope it works out for you.
Well, like I say, I'm 99% sure, because the last person they apprehended stole the identity of a judge. And they caught him, and right away he wanted to plea bargain because he was going to get like 50 years for stealing the identity of a federal judge. So he started singing.
Well, I can't wait for the miniseries that they're going to make about this on TV.
Well, I'll tell you, I could almost write a book, I think.
Oh, yeah. No, I think you definitely should. Actually, with $100 million, just pay somebody else to write it for you.
Yeah.
I know a guy.
My notes are awful, Tim, and I don't think anybody could go through them. But I also wanted to tell you that hopefully within maybe a couple of weeks or so, we'll do that Dillingham thing.
Sure. That sounds great. I just drove by there the other night. I went out to get some water there from the natural spring and drove by. So it's still there.
Well, they got a natural spring out there?
Down the street. If you've ever been to Sandwich, near the Sandwich Town Hall?
I have, but I never knew anything about the Dillingham areas because I looked on the web. There's a bunch of property that's listed under their name.
Yeah, there's multiple Dillingham homes,
right.
Including one that's still in use and owned by the family. They have like a big Dillingham reunion every few years at that house. But this is the former bed and breakfast site. Right. So it's if you search Dillingham House in WBSM, you'll find the story that I wrote about it and get the exact location.
I'll have to do that. Hey, thank you much for that website and everything. And hopefully, like Monday or Tuesday, I'll crash Gary's show if you don't mind.
All right. Hey, I don't mind. It's not my show, so call in anytime.
All right. Have a good one.
Bye-bye.
Yep, bye-bye.
Yeah, for those of you who have never been to that natural spring, I don't think they want people to know that aren't residents, but there's a great natural spring right downtown Sandwich, right next to the town hall, across from the old church there. Just comes right up out of the ground. They built a little box around it with some spouts so that you can fill up your jugs or you can take a drink directly out of it. And I got like a really super deal on one of those Yeti coolers.
Yep.
And so I had that in the car, and I just filled it up with all the water that I could from that spring. Actually, I filled it up, drank a whole bunch of it, and then refilled it because it's so good. And I brought it in and had everybody here try it, and they're like, this is the best water I've ever had in my life.
And that public water fountain that's right out there.
Yep. It comes right up from the ground.
Yep.
Way better. I mean, maybe there's some goose poop or something in it, but still, it's pretty good. We have another call on the line. Good evening. You're on Spooky South Coast.
What's shaking, Playboy?
Hey, Lamone.
How you doing?
What's going on?
Hey, I'm just living and loving. So I have a couple of questions. Since your beard is trimmed up so much, you look like Jake the Milkman Milliman. Remember him, the wrestler?
No.
From the AWA, he was. You remember when Adorable Adrian Adonis and Jesse Ventura used to be tag team champions?
Yep.
Adorable Adrian Adonis left, and he went to the WWF. WEFN, and so he went. So Jake the Milkman Milliman took his place, and they wrestled against was it the Road Warriors? So that was crazy. No, that was before the Road Warriors. I forgot who it was. The High Flyers. But like I said, look at him. You look like he just died in 2016. It's kind of sad. He was a nice guy, but with your beard trimmed like that, it was kind of spooky looking.
My beard's not trimmed at all. That's the problem. I probably should get it trimmed. So
all right. One other thing, Matt looks like I'm talking Matt Blystein. Looks like he just got you see it's like that? It's like, I felt bad for him. And so there's a few things. All right, so what would you like to say, young man?
I was saying you had a question?
Well, yeah, I do. So about Bigfoot, I have some pictures that I took. Remember I told you last week that, the week before that I had pictures when I went to Utah, you see something over behind the sign. I'd like to share that with you, but I don't know who to share it with. And also, I'd like to give gifts to like maybe 20 of your top chat listeners. A lot of the people that I've known, at least that I talk to when I come to the show, I like to give them gifts. I'm feeling philanthropic right long and now.
Okay.
I guess that's what they call it. My mom says I go blind if I keep doing that, but so I just thought that'd be kind of nice to do. And when are you coming to Vegas? I thought you were planning on coming to Vegas.
I don't know when I'll get out there, but there's rumors of there being something happening Midnight in the Desert related, so we might not be that far from Vegas if we're in Pahrump, right?
Yeah, that's right over the hump. I can make it down that way if that's the case. What I was thinking would be good, like maybe next month, maybe come out on the 2nd for like we can do Spider-Man Coming Home. We're doing that right there. This Thursday we did Dark Phoenix, which was kind of like for such a great such a great franchise. It was kind of sad to see how it went out with the winter.
Yeah, they kind of gave up on it because they know it's their last one. But so no, I don't think I'll be able to make it out for Spider-Man. But well, maybe somewhere down the line, maybe later on this year, or you could always come out to New England, Lamone.
I'm a black guy. I see what they do to black people out there.
No, that's
nice
not
try,
true at all. All right. Well, thank you very much. Thank you for the call.
All right.
Have a good night.
Buy other Matt in the background. Play on Playboy. God bless you.
See you later.
Bye, Eileen.
that was giving chat room shout outs. All right, that is Lamone. He promised gifts to the chat room. I'll let them fight it out amongst themselves because he's still in there. So
he could be referring to potato chips.
I don't know. Yeah, you don't know with Lamone. You never know. He's got connections. So, but you know, we were talking about Bigfoot, and if anybody does have any questions for Dave, or if you want to call in maybe with a local experience, 508-996-0500. And I would have thought that this is something where you get a couple of reports, you know, now and then. Like maybe you might get lucky if you get like 1 or 2 reports a year. But Moniz is constantly like, you know, I'm not going to be on the show tonight. We got a call. We're going out to this area. It seems like there's a lot of activity lately. Is this something that is an increase, Dave, or is this something that is kind of how it always is for you guys, and I only know about it because Moniz is going with you now?
I think for myself personally, I've had my experiences that happened to me in the last 4 years, and probably all the years before that, not much at all. And there has been more sightings reported and different organizations are getting reports. And
what would you attribute to that being on the rise?
I think more people going and enjoying the outdoors, getting out of the cities and hitting the trails and hitting some of that, camping, just getting out, fishing, a lot of recreational activities on the water. Those seem to be a lot of the witnesses that are just out enjoying nature.
So you'd say a majority of your stories come from people who just happen to see a creature as opposed to people that are going out looking for a creature?
Yes. Yeah.
Do you still get some from people who are kind of like amateur squatch hunters themselves?
Yeah, but there is a lot of stuff coming out by researchers that are getting good footage or good tracks and casts and all kinds of stuff.
So if somebody is going, and obviously, you know, we don't want to recommend that anybody goes on their own, especially, you know, the first time or anything. But if somebody is going, what do you recommend that they bring with them for something that they would want to use, not only for their own safety, but also to maybe help to document anything that they find?
Lots of bug spray.
Lots of bug spray. That's probably top of the list, huh? You know, plenty of water. Be safe. I wouldn't recommend going out and doing this alone. Some people do, but I don't think it's good to do anything out in alone in a lot of these woods where a lot of just mysterious stuff happening, missing 411 and all the national parks and, you know, wild animals, and there's big cats around
but just
here.
You could trip over a stump or fall in a hole or something.
That's it. Yeah, you turn your ankle out there, you're in trouble, you know.
What's the great meme that goes around now and then? You know, when I was raised, I thought that I'd encounter quicksand a lot more as an adult than I really did. You know, but hey, it happens, and it happens around here.
I'd say always keep a good scale item too. If you do come across a track in the ground or anything, just something to, you know, pictures are great, but you need something in the picture to give it.
What do you recommend people use?
$1 bill.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I've seen a lot of dollar bills.
A lot of rulers, a small ruler. Even if you if you didn't have something, you could throw down a lighter or a pack of cigarettes. Most people have those.
And if you have 2 people, it's probably not easy to do when you're working by yourself and trying to work the phone at the same time, or the camera at the same time. But you know, a measuring tape is good to bring because you can just clip it onto your belt.
Exactly.
You know, so if you have somebody else that can kind of take the picture of you measuring
it's indisputable. Everyone knows. You know. So you can see the numbers right there.
But what do you think happens more often when people are going out and looking for this? Do they have an experience where they see something or they hear something more often than they find a print, or do they find a track more often than they might see or hear something?
I think tracks are more scarce because of the especially the layout, mostly around here, and especially in Mass, the thick leaf litter, moss. You'd have to get really lucky and have one walk through a muddy field, and it's just the odds. I think more reports to us anyways of sightings, or they call it paralleling or following out back to the car to get them out. That's when you'll get trees shaking, rocks thrown at you. A lot of it's, my opinion, is just intimidation to get you out.
So they're trying to scare you away from them.
Yep. Yeah, actually, the woman today that was out with us has a lot of stuff going on in New York, and she was saying how she knows they're following them, and she'll stop, turn around, and out of most reports, people will report that when they stop, the noise stops. Like they'll hear footsteps or leaves crunching or branches breaking, and they'll stop and turn around. And then it stops. Then they'll start walking again, and it starts up again. And a lot of times we think it's just they're following you out to make sure you leave,
right?
Instead of just and it's all opinion too. I mean, it's all my opinion that. They call them watchers. That's their main job, is to protect the clan, and any cows coming in or any people coming in on the trails. They kind of keep an eye on you, follow you around, and they want to know what you're up to. I think it's just all part of survival.
I mean, it's amazing that you're dealing with something that is such a physically imposing creature, but yet it still hides while trying to scare you away. It could just come out and be outright intimidating.
Yep.
But it's smart enough to know that would put it at risk.
Occasion.
I think on occasion, if you stumble into too close, where they do maybe have some younger ones around, they will get a little more aggressive. And there's been a lot of, actually, I've experienced myself of trees pushed over, we call it. You'll literally hear it bending and crack and smash off the ground. You'll hear it hit the ground pretty hard, and that's usually a sign for us to, like, we don't want to get any close. Okay, we respect that. And time to go, maybe.
They're highly intelligent creatures, for sure.
Yep.
Would you say that they're close in intelligence with human beings?
I would. I think it's a form of an ancient human that it's more than just another dumb animal that's out in the woods, and it's main. We call them the ninjas of the woods, the ninja of the forest. They can just follow you around. They could walk right by them and you 10 feet away, and they could just crouch down like a stump, or very mysterious.
I can relate a story that was given to me by a person. He did 3 tours in Nam as a Marine recon. Okay, so this is somebody that's trained to be in the woods, knows how to move around in the woods without being, detected, and is very keen to his environment. After his 3 tours in Nam, he was on the West Coast in the Seattle River, and he was doing some fishing. And he was parked his canoe up on a river bank, and behind him was, a bank about 4 foot high right behind him. So what he was doing is he had the radio on. He said he was listening to a ball game and just fishing. He would pile the fish he was catching up on the bank behind him, and he said he's sitting there just fishing away, listening to the ball game. He caught a fish. He picked it up on the reel or on the line, took it off the hook. He turned around to put it with the pile of the others, and then he noticed that he was looking at 2 knees on either side of him. And at that point, he looked up, and this thing reached down, grabbed the fish out of his hand, already had the other fish that was on the ground behind him in his hand, and stood up and walked away. He's like, I spent 3 years in the bush. This thing snuck up on me, and I didn't hear this. And this thing was huge. Yep. He's like, I've never been more scared in my life. He's like, threw the fishing gear in the canoe and paddled the hell out of there.
So it sounds like, Dave, that you're convinced that this is a flesh and blood creature.
Yes.
And Moniz, I don't think I've ever asked you, but is that your take as well?
Yeah, I think there's a flesh and blood element to it, definitely.
But is there also a supernatural element to these creatures as well, Dave, in your experiences? Is there something there that makes it so that it just goes beyond just being a regular creature?
A couple strange things that have happened, but I really can't say. I've seen orbs like right in areas where there's been sightings.
Like seen with your own eyes?
I actually, last year, I didn't see the creature because it was seen through the thermal. We were doing an expedition in Western Mass, and a lot of people saw it. There was 3 different guys with thermals, and they all saw it, and I could tell they saw something, And then when they said it was gone within 10 seconds, a little orb goes just over the tree line and just goes along the trees and gone. Everyone saw that. But I wish I knew. That's like the $1 million question. I used to be dead against it, but now I'm a little more open to it. You know, it needs an explanation. We've gone here, we've gone there. It could help explain.
Right, and it might not be so much that it's kind of weird that a bear's on TV behind you guys right now as we're doing this, but it could be not so much just that these creatures are supernatural in their nature, but it could be that the places where we're able to encounter them are just supernatural places. Moniz, you were talking about the Bridgewater Triangle and having all these other experiences happening while you're out there looking for Bigfoot. You're capturing EVPs, hearing voices and all these kind of things, so that maybe it's those window areas that we're going into that let us see them. It doesn't mean that they're paranormal, but it just means that we see them more, well, I mean, that they're supernatural, but we just see them more in these supernatural areas. Because you've gone to some places where, you know, where you go and look for these things are pretty much the same areas of where we go and look for other things as well.
Right. I mean, Massachusetts here, the big spots that we have for encounters are down here in the southeast coast, the Hockomock area, Middleborough, Lakeville, Bridgewater areas. Then it's around the Quabbin Reservoir, and then the western part of the state out near like North Adams and stuff. Yeah. Correct?
Berkshire Mountains, October Mountain, you said earlier.
Well, I mean, all of those places also have all kinds of other stories associated with them, so it definitely fits the pattern. And it seems that way in other areas, too, where even if it's not places where us in modern times have that type of spiritual attachment to those places, the Native Americans certainly did. You know, going back to, 300, 400, 500 years ago, these are places that might have been used for ceremonies or rituals or things like that. And now they're places where we still to this day, even though we're not going through the same ceremonies that they are, we're still having those same kind of weird encounters. The Freetown State Forest being like a huge one, people will say that when they go there, they can feel a presence there. And I'm sure that you feel that in a lot of the places that you go. You can feel, even if it's not the creatures necessarily that you're feeling something.
Yeah. I've seen some strange lights, too, not orbs, that were just the tops of the trees all lit up. Actually, like the top half of the trees. From there, it was just all lit up. And it just kind of like moved up the tree and gone into the sky. Not Bigfoot related, but it was on a guy's property that had a lot of Bigfoot stuff going on. I mean, that's why we were there. So you never know what you're going to see. And I can't say it's not related because it, like I said, it happened in the same place. There's been cases where tracks have just stopped in the snow, like a footprint will just stop, and it was something from above took it.
Maybe.
So it's head scratcher.
Well, what would you say is probably the best, looking at it as a physical flesh and blood creature, what would you say is the best piece of physical evidence that you've come across?
Not that I've come across personally, but what has been found already and accepted as evidence by the most notable people that are studying this is the dermal ridges and the tracks, which is like fingerprints, hair samples that come back unclassified, with a kind of link to human, but not quite human, not quite animal, somewhere in between. Just stuff like that. There's been blood samples, hair samples, saliva samples from food that, researchers have left out.
Fecal. Fecal.
Fecal.
That's Moniz's specialty.
Yeah.
Actually, that would be one of the better things to study. We'll put the junior high humor aside, but inside basically fecal matter, you have very specific microbial and other enzymes that you can test that will tell you what family that this comes from. It's a very definitive test because gut microbes are pretty well studied for scientific purposes, believe it or not, to understand how digestive systems work in animals and humans. So, yeah, it's a very definitive test.
And So what about yourself personally then? Have you got any good physical evidence in your own investigations?
I actually have some interesting sound recordings. Nothing of no casts. I've seen some odd shapes in mud that actually had water in the puddles that you really couldn't do nothing with it. But again, it doesn't prove nothing, but they were pretty big and very shaped like a human foot, but just very big.
What about the sounds? What were those like?
The sounds were recorded from, I was actually out with a camcorder, not filming anything, just filming scenery actually going down in a canoe. And I didn't actually notice it till I come home because it was just on a tiny, this is when camcorders looked like that box over there. They were that big. But it, when I brought it back, I was listening to it on TV. It was just on a videotape, and you really couldn't hear a whole lot. I had actually heard some wood knocking, which I was hoping it would pick that up. So I went to a friend of mine who had a really nice sound system, and he played them through there, and all of a sudden you could literally hear something growling, and it's almost like a motor. Like I should have gave it to you ahead. You can play it. Sorry. And you can, I'll send the link to Matt. You can actually play it on here. And it's just like a deep, guttural groan that you can't even, a human can't imitate it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And it's actually almost motor-like. You can hear the, like it's very, very interesting.
And when you spend enough time out in the woods, you learn what different sounds are.
Yep.
So you know what's what, and you kind of have to know what's what because you want to know what's in the area.
It's something big, yeah. You can tell it's something very big. And I'd always want to have it professionally analyzed, but you'd have to send it to like Texas A&M, I think, was one of the only bioacoustic. Costs a lot of money and a lot of time. I just don't have that. So,
well, locally,
I still have the sounds.
Naval War College that they train the people with their sonar operators there. There's been UFO sounds that we've sent through there that have been used for analyzation, and we might be able to borrow some technology there. I know some people.
And then what you do is, you always make sure that you provide it to the television shows. When the television shows are looking for cases and looking for evidence, you provide it to them because then they'll turn around and they'll pay to have it analyzed. So then you get the analysis back without having to pay for it yourself.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So
I'd love to know the truth, even if it's not a Bigfoot. I'd rather know. It's either like a very big cat. It almost sounds like a lion roaring. Not roaring, but the... what's the word I'm looking for?
Like the purr?
Purr, yeah. Almost like a motor running, like just a very low, I can't do it.
Still would rather run into a Bigfoot than a mountain lion.
But you didn't hear it, but you're able to pick it up with the sound system. It sounds to me like infrasound.
It could be. That could very well, too. That's what a few of us have suggested, because I did get a feeling of dread like before that, and it's actually at the end of the recording before I shut it off, and I just got a feeling to get out of this area, being out in the water and close to the bushes where I could kind of hear knocks earlier, so I just had a bad feeling. And like I said, when I got home the next day and went to my friends and he played it through the big speakers, it was amazing. It still is. I still play them every now and then. And there's a Monsterland show I did, and they played it right on there and got a good response. So I'm hoping someone, a good animal bioacoustic expert, could answer that.
So, and you had mentioned the wood knockings, and I think that's something that a lot of people know to listen for if they're going out there. So what do you think that is when you hear these wood knockings?
I think a lot of times lately we've noticed the past couple of years that early on, so as soon as we get out of the car, we listen now. Because it could be an alert to if there's other Sasquatches in the area that they're here,
And it just sounds like something banging on a tree?
Yeah, it's just almost like something hammering. Someone will say, someone was telling me the other day they thought they heard it and they thought someone was making something at 2 a.m. out in the woods behind the house.
So we're talking...
It sounded like someone banging a hammer.
We're talking about something with force.
Yep, and hands. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
The other is what's called clacking to rocks, when they
clacking.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, again, this lends to there being that intelligence to not only be able to realize that you're there, but to want to warn the others, too. If that's the case, though, do you start to wonder if the more of these experiences that you have where you get there and you're warning them, do you feel like almost now like it's you're invading their area, and that if they're perceiving you as being a threat, that maybe it's better off if you just leave them alone?
Yes, we've been doing that too, like not replying or not knocking until you hear one, like so not initiating, in other words. And also too, it could be a lot of people have reported they've heard the knocks coming from different directions. They could be like, "I'm here, where are you?" or hunting.
Yep, just kind of
driving the deer something, this way, and
they can't. They're not going to wear orange vests to let each other know where they are. So
there's different numbers of knocks reported. Some it's just a single loud crack. Some of it's 2 or 3. You never know. And that's the thing about knocking too. When you hear wood knocks, you still need to see what's making the knock.
Right.
Unless you've been out in a pretty far area for a long time and you know there's no other people around, and depends where you are.
So I know, Moniz, you've said that you've done some work in Middleborough as of late. Where would you say are the real hot spots around this area, especially in our listening area, of where people are encountering these creatures?
Right now, Freetown, we've had a number of reports coming from the Freetown State Forest, Lakeville, and the Middleborough area. Yeah, that little tri-corner area.
So, and is this time of year?
Yes.
Is this a time when people, because they're going out into the woods more?
It's also when a lot of the berries are starting to come out and the food sources are starting to bloom, basically.
So you expect to get a big rise around this time of year every year?
Yeah.
This in late summer, fall always seems to be pretty active too. It could be after the harvest. It's cooling off. Maybe they're out and about more.
Yeah, maybe
depending on the summer too.
They might stay deeper in the forest in the summer when it's warmer out and
stay in the shade and by the water.
So, again, if people have an experience, if they see something that they think is anomalous, what's your advice to them if they think that they have one of these creatures, near their house or near their campsite or anywhere they may be?
Document, keep a journal of what's going on around your house. And definitely contact someone with experience with it that have some good advice for them. Don't go out shining lights. That depends on your motive too. Do you want to be left alone, or do you want to see them?
Right.
If you do, there are things you can do both ways. You could leave gifts out there, leave some apples out there if you know there's something going on behind your house, or if you didn't want them around, you'd want to light up your yard, put some floodlights up, and.
I mean, that's a good way because first of all, it's going to keep any kind of animals away for the most part.
Yeah.
And maybe that's all that people need to feel better, is just
security.
Light up their yard a little bit more. I think the worst thing people can do is grab the rifle and head into the woods.
Exactly.
Because you don't know what it is.
Yeah.
The next thing you know, you're running out there looking for Bigfoot and you're getting swiped by a bear or. Bit by a fisher or something like that. So there's.
Oh, sorry.
So go ahead.
No, I was just going to say a lot of people think it is a form of a human, so that's a question too. If you do kill one and you find out it's a hominid,
then you
just killed it. It's not an animal.
Well,
so
but
you
not
find
only
out
that,
if it's not an animal.
Even if it is just a straight up animal, if it was known and classified, it would probably be endangered. So you don't want to kill one of the only ones
just
that are out
there.
there.
Just to prove it, that's a big debate. There are pro-kill, and there are definitely no-kill. Most people are no-kill. I'm no-kill. I can't see it, unless it was by accident.
Or if it was a matter of you versus him.
Yeah. Self-survival.
That I agree with. Yeah.
Like, I assume that you go out into some of these expeditions, I assume that you go armed.
I don't personally, but there usually is couple people
and that's more for the other wild animals, you got coyotes and other things that
Yep.
We have bear around here. So
if you I don't know if you've seen the reports lately, but there's been a rash of black bear sightings in Rhode Island.
Yeah, they tried getting in the lady's car.
Yeah, so that's and of course we have the Cape Cod bear.
Yeah, the one that crosses the canal.
Yeah, the one that they were like, we think that he must swim across the canal, and they're like, well, that seems like a really hard swim even for a bear. And then they was like, there's traffic cam footage of the thing walking over the bridge.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
He knows what he's doing.
He figured it out.
Yeah.
It's not the first time he's done it.
He knows what he's doing. The only difference is, like, when he goes, he doesn't worry about the cop that's always sitting at the bottom.
Right.
You know, he just goes at his regular speed. So we're just about out of time. How can people reach out if they do have something going on? They want to reach out to you to report a possible...
the Bfro.net, BFRO's main database.
And so that
sighting collection.
So they would put all that information in there, and then the organization would contact you to say, we've got one in your area.
Yep, and submit a report. It'll be checked out by us and to verify it, and everything's private. Everyone can remain anonymous.
And what do you think the turnaround time is that between somebody having an experience and where you might reach out to them?
Within days, or tonight. Like if I seen one come in tonight, I'd call the person tomorrow. Obviously, I wouldn't call it tonight, but I'd get on it pretty quick. Get in touch with them. Because
if it's something that's moving, you want to make sure that you can get there as quick as you can.
Yep.
To be able to check it out.
Yep. Some people have sent in possible footprints on property. Hair samples. It could be anything.
Right, and if they want to go out with us this weekend, go to the BFRO.net and go to Expeditions, check out Massachusetts, and they can join us this coming weekend.
Yep, Thursday to Sunday.
And then what? Just one more time for people that might have come in a little bit late. So what exactly is going on? It's going to be in the Bridgewater Triangle.
Yep, we're camping at the KOA campground in Middleborough, and we base out of there, and we do trips out of there, go to different areas where there has been sightings. We got. I was actually out in Freetown today. We got north part of the triangle up in Bridgewater, Hockomock Swamp.
So you'll be going to all different places, just staying at the KOA.
Yep. Yeah, and just come back and camp. And
for those of you who aren't familiar with the KOA, but you are familiar with the Oliver House, right across the street.
Yeah.
So that's usually we tell people the other way. Like, how do I get to the Oliver House? It's right across from the KOA. So now we're telling people that that's right across from the Oliver House, and certainly it's a great base of operations. You're right there, right off Route 44, easy to get to, and it's a great place to stay from everything I've heard.
It's a big camp. You can accessible to trailers. You can hook up trailers. Nice clean camp, showers.
See that? Nice clean camp, so you have no excuses.
Yep.
Make sure you take a shower.
Yep.
And like you said, it's close to all these spots around the triangle, and
sounds like a great plan.
Location.
So there, just go to the BFRO.net website so that you can get involved in all of this. Dave, thanks for coming in and for informing us about this, and thanks for keeping him in the loop too, so that he can come back and share those stories with us.
Thank you for having me come on and giving us a little plug. I appreciate it.
No problem. And we will definitely do it again sometime. We're just about out of time for this week's show. We'll be back next week to talk more with you about the paranormal. If you want to reach us at any point during the course of the week, you can always go to SpookySouthCoast.com to find everything out about us. You can email us, spookycrew@SpookySouthCoast.com. You can also follow us on social media. You can go to the Spooky South Coast Facebook page. You can follow us on Twitter @SpookySC, right? And then it's @Spooky_South Coast on Instagram. And really, Matt does a fantastic job of running that stuff. And people get very involved and get very interactive with a lot of the stuff that goes on there. And that's what I love about this, is that, we come on and we do the show for 2 hours on a Saturday night, but the conversation continues all week long. It's an interactive thing. Let's face it, there's not a lot of people that you can talk about all this weird stuff with. So it's good that we've been able to build a little community. And I also want to just throw a shout out to everybody that's been in the chat room all night. There's always some great conversation going on in the chat room. I was trying to reach over, take a look over and see some of it throughout the course of the night, but I'm sorry if I missed some of it. There was a lot of picking on people too, so I'm sorry I missed that. I'll go back and read it later. So if anybody was making good jokes about me, I'll definitely let you know that I saw it later on. And again, too, the Ocean State Paracon, July 13th and 14th. Come on out, help us raise money for a great cause with Friends Way. And also, maybe you listen to the show and you've never come out to see us at any of our events. That's a great place to come out and pop in. especially if you're local. But if you live elsewhere and you want to come in for one New England event, well, that's a great one to come in for. And we'll also have the Mass Paracon a little bit later on this year as well, which we'll tell you more about in the coming weeks. If you'd like to come out and take part in that, I'm excited about that because we're getting John Tenney to come to New England again. So I'm pretty excited. Not only that, but get to go back to Ventford Hall, which we haven't been to in quite a while.
A couple of years.
Yeah. And but then, of course, I have to encounter the bat again in the basement. So I'm a little worried about that. I'll wear a hat. So until next week, for Matt, for Stephanie, for intern Kylie, who had the night off, I'm Tim. We want you all to stay spooktacular.